Hey everyone. So there's no stream today. So I decided to go through the video reactions and I had a list of Hello Boss / Hazbin Hotel videos. So the next couple are going to be Hazbin Hotel and reactions. I separated these for when I wasn't feeling very well. So we have let's just get right into the first one here. A critique of Angel Dust and Hazbin Hotel. Now that I have a second monitor, I can just pull it up over here. It's kind of good.
This show is good, strong 6 to a light 7 out of 10, but I was expecting to like it a lot more, and I know you'd rather hear me be negative, so let's indulge. Angel Dust has been besmirched as a character. My perfect sexy spider. My favorite thing about Hazbin Hotel.
Besmirched. Besmirched.
Easily one of the biggest problems I had with Season 1 of Hazbin Hotel was how Angel Dust was portrayed and just generally handled. Chief issue being the way he treats and interacts with the other main characters in the first half of the season. For that period, what feels like 90% of Angel's speaking lines consist of him directly referencing the fact that he is a sex worker and would have sex with the other characters in a ridiculously over-the-top and frankly mean manner. And him being a sex worker is obviously a huge part of his character, but compared to the pilot, he simply comes across as flanderized. In the pilot, Angel Dust also consistently made sexually charged remarks, but they were always phrased and delivered in such a way that indicated Angel was primarily acting this way because he found his own actions and remarks entertaining. In the first half of Season 1, he comes across like he intentionally pushes people's butt.
Yeah, but most people in trauma does do that. They adapt to the surroundings that they're in. And him being in this deal that he's in with Valentino would make him adapt to deal with coming to terms with the enjoyment of what he's doing, even though it's all a lie.
Because he wants to hurt their feelings, or agitate them, or make them uncomfortable. It's kinda a subtle difference, and I can understand how someone who wasn't obsessed with Angel might see his depiction in Season 1 and not notice much of a difference, but it's just night and day to me. And yes, a large part of this is obviously the voice actor change. It's true that I much prefer Michael Kovic's voice over Blake Roman's voice for this role, but don't mistake that as shade for the voice actor.
I didn't see a difference.
Roman is clearly a very capable and skilled voice actor, and the issue I'm pointing out here has just as much to do with voice direction as it does the literal voice itself. You can very clearly tell when Roman was told, okay, this line here needs to be delivered as flamboyantly horny as possible, and it's extremely apparent when you do a one-to-one comparison with the pilot.
100%.
This body is flawless. This body was made to be exploited. I'm going to blow you to bits. Kinky.
I'll jam that bottle down your throat.
Kinky. Come on, keep talking dirty.
This is also an issue with script writing. Before, Angel rarely, if ever, outright insulted the other characters without provocation, but in the first half of the season, on more than one occasion, he just bluntly calls Charlie and Vaggy's attempts to redeem sinners stupid. I thought the entire point of the scene I highlighted in my first Hazbin Hotel video was to showcase Angel feeling bad for unintentionally hurting Charlie's feelings regarding the very same subject. Angel was obviously not averse to making other characters uncomfortable, but it never came across as his primary motivation. Whenever he makes sex jokes at Serpentius, it's because they were teed up for him, so he saw an opportunity to be funny. Plus, Serpentius was attacking him, so making jokes at his expense feels justified. When Angel makes an offensive...
I call that the Dante effect. Like, if you've ever played Devil May Cry, that's the Dante effect. You can make jokes at your enemies when you're in a battle with them because it's justified. And I see where he's coming from here, and I completely agree.
Remark to Vaggy, it's because he's annoyed with her criticizing him for getting into a turf war, which he only did because he wanted to have fun, not because he wanted to ruin the hotel's image. When he hits on Husker, all Angel knows about him is that he's the bartender, and immediately preceding this interaction is Angel expressing how much he wants to keep the bar to Vaggy. So this interaction comes across like Angel is trying to see if Husker is interested in him, because if he is, Angel can persuade him to give him booze. And moreover, these moments moments just go by in a flash. They are not dwelled on, so it feels like even if something was said or done mean-spiritedly, everyone, including the audience, is able to quickly move on. But in the series proper, there's just generally less of a sense of urgency. Conversations don't have half-second cutaways, they rarely get abruptly interrupted by something completely unrelated, and when they do, it always feels like the conversation had reached a natural conclusion anyway. I do think this pacing is more appropriate for a full season of television, but it just results in making Angel's early scenes feel like such an unlikable interpretation of his character. Like, you can...
What I would describe it as is piss poor writing, because they needed him to be unlikable so he would be likable by the end of the season. Showing what I like to say, fake or false incremental growth and personal stakes.
Insist all you want that he only hits on Husker because it's part of his fake persona that he feels the need to keep up 24/7, but the way these scenes are executed makes it feel like he just genuinely enjoys making other people feel agitated and violated, especially when he didn't feel that way in the pilot. And I know someone is thinking, of course Angel is an unlikable asshole at the start of the season, that's the whole point of the hotel, to take in horrible, awful people and redeem them, which is exactly what happens with Angel Dust. However, ignoring even the fact that we were already introduced to a version of this character who was the opposite of unlikable, a character being an awful person and a character being likable to the audience are not mutually exclusive. Hazbin Hotel itself has countless examples of this. Alistair, for instance, is a murderer/cannibal and yet remains one of, if not the most popular and beloved character in the show. And I'm not saying every character needs to be charming and lovable regardless of their morally dubious actions. Hateable characters also serve a very valuable purpose to storytelling. And again, I know Hazbin Hotel knows this because it has a great example of an appropriately hateable character in the form of Adam. He is not your classic Renaissance Disney-era villain. This guy is not fun to watch, and it's not because he leads an annual mass murder of demonkind, it's because he constantly disrespects our protagonists, blows smoke up his own ass, and is a massive misogynist. This makes it satisfying to watch him die. And therefore, on the flip side of that coin, it is most satisfying to see a character be redeemed when they are likable, or at least when they have a nugget of likability buried under all the evil. That's what makes the audience want to see them become a better person.
If he doesn't come
of
back,
course,
then
some
it
people
would be a
will
shame.
rightly point out that experiencing abuse can very much make you an unlikable person, and if that makes Angel
That's
more
true.
relatable to you, that is perfectly valid. No ifs, ands, or buts. That's just valid. The line...
It's valid only in the case of your personal scenario. So if we're all talking about in subjectives here, okay? If it's valid to you, then it's valid to everyone else, right? Wrong. If we're talking subjective, it's only valid if it affects you emotionally, and if you're the one watching the show, then it's important. But if you're looking at like a review or something, and they're taking it as, oh, this did this and it made me uncomfortable, and it would make most people uncomfortable, then it's not valid all the way through. But then you could say it's not made for them, which is a fair face. It's not made for them. It's made for people that went through those problems. So you're on a very thin brick of ice, okay, with this, and he's saying it's valid, and that's just not always necessarily the case.
For when unlikability stops being relatable and starts being, well, just unlikable is gonna be different for everyone. And to me, early season 1 Angel is just really riding that line. And listen, even though Angel is significantly less likable in the series proper, he does still have a nugget of endearment to him. That being his self-pity stemming from the abuse he endures from Valentino. That nugget is just a lot more buried than it was in the pilot. And for this reason, it requires a lot more time to clean all the gunk and grime off his character. Time which season 1 evidently does not have. Halfway into the season, we finally bite into the meat and potatoes of what's actually going on with Angel Dust, which is that he signed away his soul to a pimp named Valentino, who forces him to work grueling hours making adult films as well as emotionally manipulates, physically assaults, and sexually exploits Angel regularly. And Angel Dust copes with this by dissociating and using drugs to forget about how awful his life is, while projecting an image of joyful, carefree, consequence-free indulgence to everyone around him, in order to maintain a good reputation, keep Val happy, and convince himself that everything is fine. This is a dark as fuck story, to the extent that I really don't want to show the worst of it.
It's not that dark. See, the reason I don't think it's that dark is because this is the world we live in, and guess what? Everyone needs to realize that, know these facts, and at some point, you have to accept that you are an adult and you can deal with situations like these. Because if you can't, then you're not going to survive in society. This is the world we live in. And it's just what you have to accept. I think one way or another, you have to be ready for these situations.
On YouTube. It is very deserving of its status as the one episode in Season 1 which is rated 18+ as opposed to 16+. But actually, that's kinda where we run into issues. They had to fit the great majority of this dark, serious, mature story into one episode, and this is the source of many of my problems with how Angel's actual character arc is executed. First of all, in order to communicate all of the content that is contained in this episode, it feels like they had to expedite the process of informing the audience. This results in a substantial amount of telling rather than showing. And look, I've really grown to dislike the way people use show don't tell as a sweeping criticism of every show they don't like in efforts to sound like they understand writing better than the people whose jobs it is to write the show. But I can't act like there's not a kernel of truth in the sentiment, and I think this episode demonstrates why. At the beginning of the episode, Angel is showing off a porno he was in, and Husker...
Okay. And they're just
I don't know how to describe this scene other than Husker goes out of his way to find an excuse to tell each of the characters in no uncertain terms what their character flaws are. It's passed off as him ranting about, I can only assume, being annoyed that the other characters get drunk and vent all their issues to him because he's the bartender. And that's totally believable, but the fact that this information is revealed so that we can immediately just tell the audience what each character's narrative arc is going to be makes it feel like this scene doesn't actually care about fleshing out a likable side character, but is instead just using him to push along the other characters' arcs. Side note, this scene illustrates another problem with Angel being so unlikable in the first half of Season 1. Because he has so consistently, intentionally made other characters uncomfortable and agitated, it doesn't feel out of the ordinary when he snaps at Husker here. Imagine how much more impactful it would have been to hear Angel spitefully say fuck you if he had been acting the way he acted in the pilot this whole time. It would have been immediately and clearly apparent that Husker had hit a nerve. Anyway, the point about Husker feeling like he only exists as a catalyst for Angel's development continues past just this scene. But first, I gotta describe how Angel actually develops in order to discuss that. So when Husker confronts Angel near the end of the episode, he convinces Angel to let his walls down and be vulnerable and honest with him by telling him about how he's made bad choices that he has to live with too. And the visuals inform the audience that this bad decision was making a deal with Alistair. Then they sing a song where Angel internalizes the fact that he is not alone in feeling like a hopeless fuck-up. Now again, this is all perfectly believable, and frankly, the lesson learned by the end of it is everything I could have hoped for with Angel's arc. But again, the fact that we speed through it all in one episode introduces technical problems. There wasn't enough time given for Husker to seem like he was figuring out that Angel was hiding something, and most of all, there wasn't enough time given for Angel to undo his mental hangups. This is the other thing I was getting at when pointing out how serious and mature the story is. The truth of the matter is that you just don't cure addiction and fix abuse victims' mental health over the course of one conversation and a song.
True.
But that really is the way Hazbin Hotel treats Angel immediately following his musical number with Husker.
I say it's because they didn't have a choice. I have a feeling that either they were planning to have the story go out into Season 2, or there was more episodes. Obviously, we're supposed to be in Season 1. But what I think is that they're probably going to rehash this in Season 2 and reuse the same idea again. And it's going to be kind of shameless, I have a feeling. But they'll probably just use this again and continue this, even though it's technically already wrapped up. They'll unwrap it just so they can make another episode. And it kind of sucks.
And for the rest of the season, Angel seems perfectly healthy. Suddenly, he's openly venting about how awful Valentino is and how horribly he's being treated in the studio. And not even just to Husker, just out loud in the hotel foyer for anyone in the room to hear. It would have been so much more emotionally compelling and realistic if Angel only felt comfortable opening up like this to the one person in the hotel he believes understands him. And because this show fails to capitalize on the intimate connection that Angel and Husker supposedly formed in episode 4, it again reinforces the feeling that Husker's role in that episode wasn't to actually become a deeper character, but rather to be a mouth that just says whatever must be said to drag Angel Dust through his own arc, and drop him off at the finish line as soon as we're done with the Angel character development episode. Like, that's hardly an exaggeration. Angel really does seem to be cured of his addiction and dependency on Val following episode 4, and this is low-key confirmed by the singular time his abuse is meaningfully addressed in the latter half of the season, where he encounters Valentino at a bar that the gang is hanging out at. When speaking to Val, Angel remains extremely calm and self-confident despite the fact that re-encountering one's abuser is one of the most triggering things an abuse victim can experience, not to mention that Valentino still owns Angel's soul.
Yeah,
based
this
on my
was
own
dumb.
personal experience, research I did, and discussions I've had, I would say that when someone has emotional and tangible power over you, you feel that shit. You can be cognitively aware that you should say or do something to confront.
So I can't talk about the stories that I hear in my support group directly, but I can say, like, so an example of what I had to deal with. There was a abuse victim that were in a marriage, and this guy was beating up on this girl, and she felt like she was lost for her body, completely numb to it, completely. She didn't have her own rights to her own, just say, physical form, right? And when someone has that much power over you, it's not that you just feel it. You feel like your soul just isn't in your body anymore. You basically feel like you are completely desensitized to everything around you, and nothing really matters other than, just getting day in and day out. And I would say that's more of a way to explain this. So I'm gonna say I completely agree here. Angel would not do this to Valentino. He would 100% not stand up like this to him, because he has no power here, and he would feel like he would have no power here.
Confront them, but mentally, emotionally, the prospect of doing so is analogous to being told to swim across the Atlantic Ocean. It's just impossible. And it's quite common for victims to report feeling that their abusers still have power over them even after a significant amount of time spent separated before re-encountering them. Honestly, one of my favorite things about Hazbin Hotel is that it visualizes these abusive power dynamics with chains, because, yeah, that's how it feels. And believe me, I have not experienced nearly as severe treatment as what Angel goes through regularly, so putting myself in his shoes, I can only imagine how immovable of a force Val would seem like for...
You're not going to put yourself in his shoes because he's a fake character. I don't like this idea of you putting yourself into a fictional character's shoes. It's not healthy. But if you, let's say you put yourself into someone similar to his shoes in real life and how it is, most people can deal with it, actually. And I at least what I have seen and what has come through my doors, most people with enough help can overcome these circumstances. But it takes years of effort.
Angel. And for this reason, I find it really hard to believe that Angel would be this capable of standing up to Valentino after so little work had been done to prepare him to do so. And even if I accept that the power of music can overcome any emotional hurdle, which is why he's so calm here, Angel knows Val well enough to know that antagonizing him the way he does will only end badly for him. This may shock you, but abusers very rarely respond with remorse when being confronted. The show ignores the very tangible reality of Angel's situation, which, like I said, is a very dark and serious tangible reality, which is made apparent by the fact that after Angel tells off Val, Val physically assaults him in public and promises to abuse Angel in the studio even harder moving forward. But this scene is kinda treated like Val is just salty because Angel served him a sick burn. They even do a goofy, nifty joke at Val's expense as if he's been narratively disarmed. And no, we never see or hear about Angel in the studio again after this scene, so I can only assume that he's just being treated like shit, only now.
I also think that if Charlie wanted to deal with this, she could just snap her fingers. Hey, Dad, one of my employees at the hotel is being treated bad. I need you to go kill Valentino. She wouldn't say that. Go deal with him, go imprison him, whatever. And he would. For her. Or she could do it himself. She's the freaking princess. I hate that this show doesn't show that Charlie has power over anything. And has the mental fortitude as a 6-year-old baby. She is the princess. What it should be is what she says goes. And that's how it should be. But for some reason, it's not.
Now the show doesn't consider it important enough to show on screen or even address in dialogue. And I'm not saying that this entire show should have been a grueling trial of unpacking and picking apart trauma, but a lot of mileage could have been made out of just a few scenes being added, modified, or redistributed. Like, what if they found a way to reveal that Husker sold his soul to Alistair before having Husker become Angel's therapist? Then Husker would have come off like more of a character and less of a plot device, and the audience would better resonate with why Husker suspects Angel is hiding something. Hell, while we're at it, what if Angel just accidentally walked in on Alistair summoning Husker's chains? Then it would be a lot more believable when Angel lets his walls down and internalizes the fact that he's not alone. It would feel like this is the natural point of collision for these two characters. As is, I feel that the experience of being an addict and an abuse victim has been simplified to the extent of being not as relatable as it could be to real people who struggle with these issues and want to see them represented on screen. And again, this perspective is just based on the information I have available to me. I do not intend to erase your experience if you did feel represented by Angel's portrayal. Hey, so this is me cutting in here to say that I have recently seen some more direct comments from people who relate to Angel Dust in this episode and are frustrated with people claiming that this episode is bad SA representation. And as a preemptive response to those sentiments, I'd just like to say that if my critique of Angel in Season 1 is interpreted as such, I've failed at my job. The actual assault which is depicted happening to Angel Dust is very impactful, and while it's not my place to say how realistic it is, I've seen many people claim debatable. That it is accurate to their experience. What I'm describing when I say that Season 1 simplifies the experience of being an...
I had a 17-year-old who watched this show, who's something similar to this, once again, I gotta be vague, happen. And she described it as, it wasn't vicious enough to really be, I'm sorry, it wasn't vicious enough to be, a descriptive way to show how she felt in that situation. So, based on her personal experience, I would say that the show did an alright job for audiences, but it could have went further. And since it was already rated 18 plus anyway, I think it should have went further. But for what it did do, I would say it did a good enough job to show that, yeah, these were problems that people deal with.
Abuse victim to the extent of being less relatable has to do not with the abuse itself, but the way it's responded to and treated as a problem that exists only in a state of either being fixed or not fixed, with very little gray area. Furthermore, I can't know for sure, but I do believe that if the Hazbin Hotel team were given more screen time to allocate to Season 1, this problem would have been mitigated. And moreover, I would not be surprised if this problem ends up being mitigated in Season 2 for the same reason. Anyways, now that that's cleared up, I mean, obviously stories are by and large about entertaining an audience first and foremost, and this very much is entertaining, but I think it's reasonable to say that Angel's arc was probably intended to do more than just entertain. So I feel it's reasonable to point out how it could have improved at what it seems like it was trying to do. And look, I'm not criticizing the fact that Angel sings a song and it makes all his mental hangups disappear. This is a musical. You can get away with making a character just sing a song and their problems go away. I think it's really hard to make that work with topics as serious as the ones covered in episode 4, especially because tangible events which progress Angel's arc needed more priority, but in general, musicals are about communicating powerful, often complex emotions and emotional revelations through song. The same way a masterfully staged, animated, and edited cut of animation can communicate a wealth of emotion in just a few seconds, a masterfully composed and performed song can communicate a series of events or changes in a character's perspective very effectively. And at this point, I would branch off into another conversation about the music in Hazbin Hotel, but honestly, I did not intend for just this section on Angel Dust to end up as long as it did, and I do not want this to become another video I spend a year making, so I'm just going to make a clean cut here and have this be an Angel Dust specific video. Lastly, I want to make it abundantly clear that the people who made this show did a very good job. The human labor that went into
That's enough. I think he made a lot of great points, but I also think you shouldn't withhold your opinions without going towards all the way. Like, this show is for adults. We know kids watch it, but you got to describe your opinions as if an adult's going to watch this. And for the show, I don't think the show did it. I don't think the show did it well enough. Because, yeah, we get it. Kids watch the show. But the show is for adults. And adults should take this more seriously. And they didn't show it well enough to describe how ruthless and how important it is for these topics to be known by people. And sure, a lot of topics have gone online and, we talk about this here and there. But I still don't think they did a good enough job to fully purvey the way we are supposed to perceive what happened to Angel Dust in the show. Well, that's all for this video. I will catch you tomorrow for the next one. We have a lot of these videos coming up. So, like 3 or 4 more. See you tomorrow.